Let me first of all say many thanks to the organizational committee of the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy, and especially for Mark Donfred, for the possibility, unique possibility for me to speak to such a prestigious audience just on the problems dealing with the international relations in a new frame, accenting on US, Russia, and also the European Union. 21 years passed, but the Berlin Wall fall is still regarded as a landmark event in Europe and in the world. It requires a correct explanation, as it is appealed to all the people of goodwill on the earth and touches many aspects of human life in the context of globalization. It is not easy to exist in the world without walls. Moreover, it's uncomfortable sometimes, if your roof leaks, for example. However, there is a new reality that changes things within the system, lay down new rules of human coexistence, and encourages humanity to work out other criteria for peace building with the framework of regions and on international scale. Since the Velvet Revolutions in Central and Eastern Europe and the Berlin Wall fall, humanity has gone a long way. Then, at the height of great change of the romantic illusions of the end of history had become widespread, it seemed that after the historic defeat of communism as a doctrine and political practice for the mankind to come to the creation of the unified global civilization based on the ideas of liberal democracy and free market economy was inevitable. But 2 decades later, new dividing lines was created on a variety of reasons, economic, political, confessional ones. Not only Russia, but also other post-Soviet countries played a very significant role in this volte-face process. The states situated on the territory of the former Soviet Union, having declared the intention to carry into practice all the values written on the banners of democratic and anti-communist revolutions, in fact created its own transitional interim reality. They were intricately intertwined different principles, once preserved from the past era of state domination over the society and the person, and others entwined with the new institutions and relationships, private property, multi-party elections, and separation of powers. But the question of how long this transition state will take place and what the result may be on the occasion of the hybrid reality is overcome has not been clear up to now. However, first of all, it is necessary to understand why it arose, whether this state was the result of a dramatic coincidence of unfavorable factors, or it was predetermined, programmed by the former Soviet Union's development from its birth to collapse. Globalization especially demands innovations relating to the organization of life, individuals, group, associations of the people, and states. And the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy shows exactly how important this innovation must be just now in the forthcoming future. When we're speaking about cultural diplomacy, we're speaking about the humanitarian dimension of walls, and of course about the humanitarian cooperation. The most important of this innovation is, of course, integration in many dimensions, technological, political, psychological at least, but with one strategic goal, leading to the practical coalition, control, command of the main actors of the world policy, United States, European Union, and Russia, of course. I underlined the last formula. Control, command belong to the hard power, you know. But the soft power must organize people well in order to make not a kind of harmony, but some kind of fruitful cooperation for peaceful coexistence just now in the future. And there is a lot of combinations of units, you know. We have a really magic triangle, for example. United States, European Council, and Russia, of course. A lot of magic is in the interrelations on this scale. Also, we have NATO with its concept of enlargement. We have Black Sea countries synergy, German, French, Russian diplomatic unit, which appears not so far along, etc. The contradictions between the participants are strong, but the needs of the strategic stabilities are understandable for all. Relations between the United States and integrated Europe remains the most important for all who include it in the global political game. The United States continue to be the single superpower, and there is a strong asymmetry in the economical, political, military possibilities as compared with the European Union. For Europeans, it is very important to reconstruct the multipolar system, and that is why we have some critics of the American hegemony in the European circle just now, and I think that the critics will be more in the forthcoming future. Just now, misperceptions between Americans and Europeans become more evident because the war with terrorism led by the United States underlines the new difficulties in the structure of United States-European partnership. That is why the negotiations between the United States and the European Council became more nervous than in the past. NATO's officials worried sometimes about the danger of appearance in inner circles of alliance. Those military men who take care about the obligations of Europe to deliver soldiers for different kinds of missions all over the world. But Americans insist on the rapid spreading and immediate using of their new weapons only. They probably will speak, we are ready to struggle, up to the last European. Taking care of all above mentioned in account, Joseph Nye Jr. pointed the strong importance both for Europeans and Americans of soft power, which must be the key instrument both for regional global diplomacy. As for Russia, President Medvedev made an attempt and even developed his own plan of the establishment of the new system of European security, taking care also its soft power in account. But he is not listened, unfortunately, by some key partners from the West. For the West as the whole, economic issues plays consolidating role. The fact is more than evident that the Western economy remains highly integrated. There are, of course, many differences in the values, but in the world, we have two regions with populations seriously related to the principles of democracy, individual freedom, and human rights defense. In Russia, unfortunately, the transit of democracy stopped or barriered, you know. And this is the most negative point in the contemporary forthcoming agenda of political deals altogether. American-Russian relations, of course, are not a zero-sum game. Presidents Obama and Medvedev, during their last meetings, agreed to act together in cutting nuclear weapons, the struggle with terrorism and extremism, and to cooperate in the fields of the economic stability in the international economics. Of course, it's words, but it must be a deal for some common actions, and maybe they start with the exchange of inexact information, which is the most impossible for cumulative action in some turbulent areas of the world. For Obama, Georgia, Ukraine, energetic problems continue to be the most difficult issues. Washington and the rest of the world say they don't recognize spheres of influence, and Russia says there are new realities of the ground. For Russia, of course, it's new realities, because acting as an empire, we have a zone of influence everywhere, you know, just on the border territory. And just now, we have a territory without walls and without order sometimes. And we must take care about the order in about 1/5, you know, part of the world. In the last, it have been 1/6. Just now, it became smaller, but non-effective sometimes in diplomacy. Georgia is a sensitive point in the frame of American and Georgian relations, and obviously it is important in the context of American-Russian relations as well. President Obama tried, of course, to improve the relations between United States and Russia, and he is honest in this decision. But we will see how this Dmitry Medvedev and Obama will speak you know, a little bit later on some sensitive topics of diplomacy. In Transcaucasus, Russia dominated in the past. Just now she feels uncomfortably here and meets new difficulties, and these difficulties comes from Georgia. The new scandal with Russian spies in Tbilisi shows that tension became tougher. There are many reasons for such phenomena, including some secret stories with illegal supplies of weapons from the West to Azerbaijan, and the attempts to disturb to the new Russian-Armenian strategic cooperation. You know, if we are taking care about Caucasus, our government just now became more exact in the suggestion of the ways of not thinking but dealing in the Transcaucasus. And just now we have an evidence of appearance of really strategic cooperation with Armenia, you know, the last Christian country, no, except Georgia, just on Transcaucasus. And US neocons is in the game on Transcaucasus, you know, and they disturbed greatly to Obama just now. some difficulties for Obama appears from their activities. As for Georgia, this country involves greatly in some clandestine operations based on personal contacts and friendship between two foreign ministers of Azerbaijan and Georgia. Personal contacts mean something for diplomacy, and these, unfortunately, contacts sometimes disturb to Russian officially and non-officially. Because of the importance of Georgia for the American decision makers, the last especially wants to make certain that Russia does not overstep the bounds in which Georgian sovereignty and the like are going to be further compromised. But American-Russian relations are complex on the whole host of fronts. Russia plays an incredibly important role with respect to the opportunity to engage with the Iranian regime regarding a nuclear program. Russians announced that they hope to host Middle Eastern conference also. Russia's important play possibly is in Israeli-Palestinian, Israeli-Arabic negotiations should they happen. In the context of energy issues, American-Russian bilateral relations still very important in the terms of energy security. A whole host of issues that will be negotiated over the next several months regarding nuclear weapons between the United States and Russia, whether we're able to control the number of nuclear weapons. In fact, there really is not an issue that is important to the national security interest to the United States as well as Russia, in which improved relations between the United States and Russia will not benefit both countries. In terms of NATO, there is evidence that this organization has an essential role to play in terms of helping to resolve the tension between Georgia and Russia. And also there are positive signs in terms of the discussion that is beginning between the United States and Russia. For instance, not too long ago, the question of missile defense program in the Czech Republic and Poland was an issue of great divide between the United States and Russia. And it is still maybe an issue of divide. But now there are discussions in earnest on whether or not there is a role for Russia to participate in such anti-missiles program. So the discussion from the sporadic cooperation to discussion moved to discussion of how best can America and Russia cooperate together in a whole variety of issues. One, of course, which is of urgent importance is the situation, as I mentioned, in Georgia. Another issue that on the top of the agenda is nuclear arms reduction. There is an issue Washington has picked openly, stating that because Russia wants a deal, this is the best way to move forward to improving relations. And yet many believe that Russia's motive is to accomplish its own role on the world stage, and that an agreement in any case may be very difficult. One of the main issues is that Russia is linking the United States missile defense system to a nuclear arms deal. The national security experts in both countries believe it is in each individual country's best interest to negotiate smaller, more efficient nuclear force than it is likely to occur. Whether it will happen, no one knows. But it is clearly something that both nations have identified as being important to the national security interest of each nation. Several years, there have been difficult relations between the United States and Russia. If we can get off a positive start of this issue, it also suggests is that on other issues where there are difficulties of view, that if we can succeed with respect to nuclear disarmament talks, then that positive attitude can be present better opportunities on the near issues, whether it's being on the broader issue on the anti-missile defense, whether it be on stopping Iran's nuclear program, whether it be energy security, whether it be Georgia, whether it be the future NATO enlargement, or NATO roles in the certain areas. All of these issues can hopefully be better addressed with a great degree of trust that have been the case over the last several years. Iran continue to be the strongest nut both for Americans and Russians. But the last month evidently shows a better understanding of each other in such sensitive question of global diplomacy. Americans prefer to speak to the human rights issues in Iran, but the United States also need to be clear-eyed as to what is danger that is presented by the Iranian nuclear problem, by Iran's financial support for such organizations as Hezbollah and Hamas. And remember that at the end of this process, as it proceeds, that the United States are still going to be, in effect, faced with the same set of problems. So the President of the United States had multifaceted aspect of how to deal with Iran. His policy of engagement is in its infancy stage, and the President has employed the proper balance of honesty, candidness, critical analysis, and restraint. President Obama also took in mind the Ukrainian issue in the context of the US-Russian relations. But just now Ukraine, managed to establish with us very good relations. And Yanukovych is a good friend of our lovely President Dmitry Medvedev, and maybe something changed, not just now, but maybe in the forthcoming future. When there was a cutoff of gas supplies to Ukraine, because of the breakdown in Russian-Ukrainian relations, no one in Europe benefited. Just the opposite. Most countries in Europe are harmed either economically or by the mere fact that their gas supply has been compromised. Better relations with Russia, if they amount to greater cooperation for the purpose of thwarting Iran's nuclear program, will benefit all Western allies across the world. Better relations with Russia, if they will to occur, should help Western allies in the Czech Republic and Poland, because maybe at that point employing an anti-missile defense program will be far more cooperative, rather confrontational. At summer 2009, the United States and Russia agreed in Moscow to further reductions in strategic nuclear weaponry amid speculation of a new dawn in Russian-American relations. It might still be too soon to tell if the unfolding strategic arms limitation talks are an isolated event, a mere byproduct of the 2008 financial crunch, or whether they carry a deeper strategic meaning. To be sure, President Obama's resort button overtures towards Russia has already raised many eyebrows. Others have interpreted Mr. Obama reaching out to the Russian merely as standard protocol, something mandatory every new administration and unlikely to go much beyond the cosmetic realm. Yet in reality, the chitter-chatter over American-Russian relations is beside the point. What matters is that any sign of reproachment between the two sent real chills down many spines in Central and Eastern Europe. And understandably so, it was America standing up to weakening Russia in 1980 and in 1990 that gave Central and Eastern Europe a new leash of life. While ongoing distrust between Moscow and Washington may hint at a new partnership, the likelihood of an eventual improvement should not be so easy ruled out. It might actually make good strategic sense for both parties. Europeans in particular would do well to keep an eye on such possibility and accordingly do so some contingencies thinking themselves. In short term, the prospects for improved Russian-American relations look bleak. While many hope that the Kremlin's supposed head could rein in Iran and help the allies in Afghanistan, serious issues prevent a meeting of minds in either Washington or Moscow. As of today, Russia not only remains the main great power concessor to American hegemony in the Middle East, it is also a major player in Central Asia. Moscow gives Tehran nuclear adventure appropriate United Security Council cover and assists it with key military technology like air defense system. In turn, Iran and its wide range of proxies in Iraq, Lebanon, and Palestine remains a major obstacle to American primacy in the Middle East. Russia's role in Iran is not just about leverage, but more importantly, it is also about maintaining what's left of balance of power in the Middle East. It goes without saying that Moscow is not going to trade this away so easily. Similar dynamics operate in the case of Afghanistan. Moscow's blessing would result in important logistical advantages for the allied force in the Central Asian country, insofar as Russian controls, either directly or indirectly, much on the territory surrounding Afghanistan. In Russia's eyes, giving the influence in Central Asia and in the Middle East, is something they can only be justified if exchanged for gains in its so-called near abroad, namely the area encircling Russia's core, Eastern Europe and Caucasus. And the Russians know that this won't fly in Washington. It is one thing for Washington to express curiosity over a potential ground bargain in region, but quite another to act on it, particularly after the Russian operation of peace enforcement in Caucasus in 2008. After all, and also increasingly important, Russia's cooperation is not that critical for the United States, and Eastern Europe remains too valuable strategic asset. Not only does it allow Washington to strengthen its grip over the European Union, but it also provides a forward sight for American power projection into Eurasian's heartland and rimland areas, as well as serving as an insurance policy against eventuality that Russia finds the strength to re-emerge as a peer competitor. In any case, over the longer term, Russian-American relations certainly look brighter. For one thing, Russia's relative power is projected to decline further, while other powers will go on rising, especially China. In the decades to come, Moscow will strive for an autonomous strategic space within Eurasian's heartland as the world system becomes progressively multipolar. This does not necessarily means that Russia will forgive a rock-solid alliance with Washington. Only that in unfolding American-Chinese struggle, Moscow's allegiances are most likely to rest with Washington than with Beijing. The alternative, a strategic partnerships with China, would be a far more oppressive scheme, and this is something Moscow is well aware of. A giant and powerful China, with its eyes set squarely on Russia's vast Siberian wastes, would become a major concern for the Kremlin. If it comes down to a choice between Washington and Beijing, and someday it most likely will, Moscow would choose the lesser of two evils and eventually accept great American involvement in Central Asia. Washington's geostrategic focus in eastern half of Eurasia will only continue to grow. Many Americans will come to see greater Russian cooperation in both Middle East and Central Asia as ever more desirable to offset a rising China. And any upgrade in Russian-American relations would require Washington to cut Moscow some slack in the areas that lie closest to the latter's heart. But this will all have a big impact on Europeans. They will have less to worry about if China slows down or is geopolitically frustrated. This will also to be a dream scenario from American perspective. Maintaining a balance of power in both Europe and Eastern Asia would not depend on the goodwill of the third party, even if a friendly one like the European Union, but only on the United States. In such a scenario, Europeans could sit back and leave the United States to do the heavy lifting in Central Asia and the Middle East while benefiting economically from the reduced need to build up their strategic resources and reach. But the changes are that China will continue to rise, and as Americans' relative power declines, Washington will be forced to make choices. As a new strategic conundrum unfolds, the United States will probably realize that Western Europe first and the Middle East later will be relatively more and more expendable if compared to Central Asia, the Indian Ocean region, or East Asia, where the future great game will be inevitably take place. Europeans must begin to work under the assumption with an eye of acquiring greater geostrategic influence over Eastern Europe, the Caucasus, and the Middle East. Hesitation today will only jeopardize the European interest tomorrow, when the realities of a changing geopolitical landscape knock on the door of the demographically aging continent. And only the European Union provides a viable framework for any European geostrategic reawakening. So far, as Washington has played tough cop on Russia and the Middle East, Europeans have been able to let the Americans do the heavy lifting from which Europeans ultimately benefit while sitting back and talking about complexity, while praising the benefits of engagement, dialogue, and so forth. Yet as the global geopolitical tide changes, Europeans are likely to have no choice but to dust over their old strategic software, or else their current vulnerability in Eastern Europe and over the supply of gas and oil will come to look like peanuts compared to how it will be without Washington's umbrella. Undoubtedly, this is fast becoming the real test of whether Europeans are able to break away from the strategic prison in which they locked themselves during the past 60 years. And time is running out. For Russia, just now, it's extremely important to do something good in the frame of the collective security issues and also in the system of the collective peacemaking, peace building, peace enforcement, etc., etc. When I'm speaking about this mission, we must take into account that Russia have a potential, have a desire, have a trained men in order to widen the operations not in all continents, but in the most sensitive points for the Western and all the world civilization. The United Nations do a useful work in this direction, but she needs the additional help of great powers, and Russia included, and such case as the case of Darfur, the situation in Sudan shows it exactly. Security Council produced some sorts of resolutions relating to peacemaking in this turbulent area. Everything done well, but technology of peacemaking, peace enforcement, peace building is not so effective. And Russia demonstrates the will to do something in this direction. Just now, Premier Putin and former President Putin, especially, he take care about this deal. And he did a lot in Darfur, officially and non-officially. You know, of course, there are a lot of problems, but the situation is that all mankind need not the whole crowd of peacekeepers, but they need the special combination of those persons who have an ability to prevent conflict and to do something with preventing difficulties as a whole. And in the concept of new Russian diplomacy, there is a very interesting red line of underlining our ability to do something on the peacekeeping Afghanistan. You know, that's the point. And you listen that I'm speaking, mixing the geostrategic terms with the terms of soft diplomacy, taking care about Europeans, United States of America, and Russia. And of course, it's the reality, you know. States do as they can, you know. People must act more effectively. And of course, there's a quest of the real new standards to diplomacy on both on the international and regional scales. And there is a great quest for people, looks like you know, and the people who are integrated in the system of cultural diplomacy. And I think that my lovely country will think more about the importance of soft power in the concrete European diplomacy, Asian, African, etc. And if we will manage to provoke this trend, I think the world will be better. So thank you very much for listening. Точно, да? Questions?
Okay.
No questions.
No,
it's
no
okay.
questions. We have time.
That's good.
Okay. Yeah.
Vitalik, why you ask you this?
Vitaly Chumakov, Moscow. I have one question, actually two questions. It is very hard not to agree with you when you are talking about that technology of peacemaking and peacekeeping is not ideal, is not effective at the moment. But how do you see the role of UN Security Council permanent members, including Russia, United States, and especially China, in terms of UN peacekeeping missions reforming? This is the first question. And another question, you perfectly know that this December, for the first time in probably 15 years, under the Kazakhstan presidency, there will be the first summit of OSCE organization by the head of states and head of the governments. So would it have any impact onto peacekeeping and peace building and peacemaking system in the world? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
No. United Nations, of course, needed changes. Security Councils work very, very well. The department responsible of the United States, responsible for peace keeping operations, is also have a very wide spectrum of activities. But the task just now is to build what I call the multi-level system of preventing. That's the point. It's very good, to do something, after conflict appears, And just yesterday, one gentleman from Denmark underlined that we must think about those techniques which is really prevent conflict. And of course, it is the real quest for changing not only on in the United Nations, but in the new combinations and alliances. Looks like the Society of Independent States, led by Russia and just now headed by Kazakhstan in the last meeting. The question about technology is very serious, The question about the changing in the mind of politicians when we are speaking about peacemaking seriously is also extremely important. So the new paradigm must be based on the really new thinking, first of all, and new making in order to organize the new style of peace building for the benefit of all powers. I think that in our society, in the Russian surroundings, we have a very good potential, We even have a special 15th Brigade of Peacemakers just located in Samara and ready to go everywhere. But with others, with Kazakhstan, with some others, partners in this unique organization. And of course, it will be, if we combine these activities with the United States headquarters and special units, we will do something. That's why I mentioned Darfur, the largest peacekeeping operation, Unfortunately, not effective, German is out of the game because this country concentrated on the Afghanistan issues, and its position good. France, Netherlands agreed to send additional military men. We are ready, to send. Let's give a possibility. And our new military men must do something. But I, as a scholar, and others, my colleagues, must train these new peacekeepers, must taking care about the importance of some soft diplomacy in this situation, must really do something in order to prevent. That's, I underline the importance of this, to prevent conflict, because it's very wise to do all the best after we receive a destroyed and tragedies. But let's try to organize operative activities on many levels in order to stop the conflicts everywhere.
Hello, thank you very much for your nice presentation. My name is Nicoleta Vasilkovsky, and I'll have a short question for you. How do you see the Russia position in Transnistria?
Transnistria? There is a very interesting question because it relates to the problems of new states, of those surrogate states which appeared on the surface, on political surface, some years ago. And this situation, must be settled by really diplomatic means, and it must be also the universal basis of thinking, not about only Transnistria, but let's speak about Abkhazian issue, South Ossetia, all together. In the world, there are a lot of those countries which have the similar problems with self-identification, etc., etc. Even my lovely Czech Republic, interests of which I represent in my mother Russia, even in Czech Republic have difficulties of understanding with Liechtenstein because of some sort of question, and he is partly recognized country, Czech Republic. What about Transnistria? What about South Ossetia? There is a great problem of Artsakh or Nagorno Karabakh. So my idea is personally to discuss on informal level, maybe in the structure of Institute for Cultural Diplomacy, all these issues in the future. Or maybe to start a real diplomatic serious game in order to make the life of peoples better. The Transnistrian questions, the question not only appealed to Russian activity, but to Ukrainian too. And of course, it demands the wise Moldovan position. And when we're speaking about Moldova, we're taking in mind Romania, So this is a complex question. And if we will find the formula, we will receive a success. If not, it will be some years of difficulties. Thank you.
Thank you for this lecture. I'm from Sudan. I think peacekeeping and United Nations efforts and international diplomacy will not be succeeded in their 4 issues unless you consider the real development problem in Sudan. That area is suffering from the basics of the basic needs, how to afford the basic needs and infrastructure. I think the international diplomacy should move towards taking the responsibility of development in that area. The negotiation should be based on a sustainable development, because those people are over like 50 tribal and ethnic groups, 104 language, but they are living together in hundreds of years. But the problem is that they are living in still that style, we can say a primitive way of living, the collection of daily food through deserts and those things. So you cannot keep peace just through negotiation and through concentrating more and more troops on the area. I think that you must share the development in that area, because there is a lot of flow of money and nothing happening.
I agree with you absolutely. And we must take care about the human capital, the infrastructure, about the interrelationship of the people, and this will be the base of the sustainable development. We must underline. So this is activities of the people, the new states, the associations, looks like ours, for example, to do something in this direction. And maybe the peace became more solid and exact, Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much for this interesting speech. My question is, Russia is a member of SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and some years ago, already Kazakh President Nazarbayev said, this cooperation joins half of mankind, so it's something really serious. Taking into account that India and Iran are just observers nowadays. Originally aims of this cooperation concerned mainly border security and economic cooperation. But from 2005 and concretely from 2007, military cooperation started to rise with the operation in Chelyabinsk Oblast in Russia, 4,000 soldiers. What is the future of this joining from a military point of view? May this become an alternative to Western NATO and the rise of a new Eastern Bloc in some way? Mm-hmm. What is the state of this cooperation nowadays? Thank you.
As any alliance, the Society of Independent States, and just now the concept of Nazarbayev, President Nazarbayev, in order to improve this infrastructure is understandable. We are taking care about the typical coalition in this situation. Of course, it must be based on the real politics and must have a solid, including military background. But people, of course, means more. I'm taking about this responsibility of the partners of this coalition. Nazarbayev is ready to solve some problems. For example, even he is ready to solve the problem of tariffs, customs, etc., etc. So it means that Kazakhstan taking care about the people, cooperation in this situation. But of course, the first stage, we must do something solid based on this situation. And this is real diplomacy. Another stage is an exact cultural diplomacy and contacts which must, unite pupils. And plus also the responsibility of each leader. There is very sensitive situation. Russia is ready to be serious in their desire and have reasons. Kazakhstan is also ready for her very good for the mission. Taking care of the relations with China, with India, Central Asia, etc. It's Kazakhstan. And, but just now we must do that others, commanders of this alliance must be responsible, reasonable, wise in this situation, and very serious, because, for example, when the discussion about the, this inter-contacts in Moscow, of course they are smiling, waiting from Russia, something, this, and this, taking care about the borders. Not some weeks ago I visited the Republic of Armenia. you know, I have been surprised that Russia have been responsible for the borders between Turkey and Armenia, you know. Though it was not a secret, but anyway, Russian troops organized the borders just in this sensitive region. And it must be Armenia who is responsible, you know. And it must be Azerbaijan who is also responsible, etc., etc., etc. So it will be equal responsibility. We must take care about the people seriously. And we not forget about the weapons, you know, but we do something in the right directions, taking care about innovations, you know, fruitful cooperation in economic sphere, etc., etc. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much. My name is Abdul Qudus. I'm from Afghanistan. My question is that after end of Cold War, or since Russian troops left Afghanistan, once again Russian government reconsidering Afghanistan. Could you please tell me the factors that why Russia reconsidering a country where they don't have any good memories in the past? That's my question.
Afghanistan is a serious country for great powers, you know. The problem of vacuum just here is crucial one. We have been in this country in an old times. Just now the United States and coalitions is here. You know, without Russia, it is very difficult to do something in the organize the peace in this turbulent area, you know. And of course, for us, Afghanistan continue to be sensitive country from the one side. Of course, we forgot about the strict involvement in this situation. But we must do all the best in order to combine the facilities when West taking care about the stabilities, together with the people of Afghanistan, you know, in order to make this country more calm, you know, and more stable in the development. This is serious geopolitical issue, and you know, all mankind just now thought a lot about how to organize the deal of peacekeeping in Afghanistan. And I hope that in the forthcoming future, even for Russia also, it will be the great need of some sort of energy, you know. But in combination of activities with the West, with the East, with Afghani people, not as it has been in the past, but on something new scale. So I'm waiting as you some sort of innovations, not presence, but cooperation, real one. And in order to solve border questions, you know, in order to solve humanitarian dimension, etc., etc. That's why I'm taking care that in the agenda of the policy of Russia as the whole and the diplomacy must be more evident the issues taking care about the soft power and cultural dimension. You know, it's absolutely new for us, believe me. And we must do something officially, and especially non-officially, to represent not great Russian deal as an empire, you know, and some sort of new politics of Russia everywhere. And believe me, the new government, led by Dmitry Medvedev, just now is ready. I underline the formula of Dmitry Medvedev: modernization plus democracy, plus innovations in public diplomacy and in the diplomacy. And of course, as a whole, our wise guys must think more about the real meaning of the humanitarian issues, real meaning of cultural diplomacy, and all it connected with these things of humanistic dimension of all political or important political matters, including, of course, Afghanistan. We began and we finished with this country, you know. Thank you very much. That's all.
We have time for one more question if we...
Yeah. It's okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Maria. I was born in Bulgaria, but I'm currently a student in the UK in the Department of Slavonic and Eastern European Studies at UCL. I would like to ask you to comment on Russia's policy towards Chechnya and the rise of terrorism in Chechnya. Thank you.
Chechnya is a very good question, you know. Very tough in the past, just now. Very serious just now, because Chechnya just now acting as a part of Russia. And when we're speaking about Chechnya, don't take care about international law. This is Russian responsibility in the inner structure of our society. That's the point. Sometimes we do a real mistake when I'm taking care about that Chechnya is independent, there is a quest for separation, etc., etc. Just now, this is a stable, typical Russian unit of our great country. And the commander of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov, solves these problems, sometimes toughly, but very, very seriously. Of course, with the help of Kremlin. A huge amount of money gave by Kremlin in order to calm the situation. And what to do? Chechnya, okay.